Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Filmmakers Life. My name is Joanne Butcher. I work with filmmakers to teach them how to raise money and to get the funds that they need to get their films produced, financed, and distributed. And so my podcast is a series of interviews with filmmakers who may very well be a little bit ahead of you. And so I always want to learn from them how they started and how they got their careers going, because I want to see filmmakers earning money from their creativity, their talent, and their hard work. And so, really, that's what we focus on, and that's what we're working on, developing careers for filmmakers. I think that's the best way of saying it. So I am very, very excited today to introduce to you my very own client, Walter Schlomann. And Walter is going to answer my first question that I always like to answer. And this is, you'll see why we don't do a bio at the beginning. But my first question that I always ask is, when did you first know that you were a filmmaker?
Okay, I'm surprised by that question, but I think it's a great question. I think I think when I fell in love with film, were there two times. One was when I was a kid and I watched Superman episodes, and I always wanted to know how they make him fly. I wanted to find that out. And then
Live action Superman or
it was a TV show.
animation?
It's a TV show. Yeah, the live it was a
It's
television
live
show.
action.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was black and white, I think, maybe.
Uh-huh.
And I had come to the States. I was about probably 11 or 12, and it was running here. And I always wanted to know, like, how did they do that? I knew it was a trick. I knew there was something. I know he didn't fly, but like, what's the secret? And then the other, I think, then fast forward to college, and I majored in international development economics, and I took one film class. And it wasn't a filmmaking class, it was studying film, looking at films and talking about them. And I was like, wow, this is very cool. And that's, I think, when I decided to embark on the journey.
You know, I love your Superman story. That is so great. I I don't think I knew back then by any means, but when I was a very, very young child, I used to have dreams that at the end there would be a title saying the end.
Uh-huh.
And so, Walter, I didn't realize you were not born in America. Is that right? You came from
Correct, correct. Brazil, from Brazil.
Brazil?
Yeah.
Know
Yeah,
that?
yeah. And my studies focused on international development, and I did research in Brazil.
Where in
And
Brazil? Where in
I'm from
Brazil?
São Paulo. I'm from São Paulo. I came to the States as a child. I was 11,
Yes.
but my heart is always in Brazil. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
We never talked about this. Did you know that I've worked with the Brazilian Film Festival here in Miami for
I
29?
think I know I didn't know for 29 years. You had mentioned it. Did you? I just saw yesterday. I saw Still Here. I'm Still Here. Have you
I
seen?
haven't seen it yet.
Oh, oh,
Start,
oh.
I'll
It's
start.
and it's the period that the film takes place in the 70s. I left in 67, so
Uh-huh.
but the military
Like the hunter.
they took over in 64, and then I went back in 70 and 74 or 75. So it's like the time period that I'm familiar with. It's a very amazing film. Yeah.
Wow. My goodness, I know so much more about Brazilian cinema than you would expect from an English person who's never been to Brazil.
I didn't know you ran, so you were involved with the festival. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So for many years, well, I was their fiscal sponsor at the very beginning, and so we always had something at my cinema, or and then they had me run their educational program. So every year they would fly 140 or so filmmakers up from Brazil, basically the entire Brazilian community. The only person I've never met in the Brazilian film community is Walter Salles.
Uh-huh,
There's the only
uh-huh.
one that
And that's my name in Walter. It was Walter.
Walter. Oh,
Walter.
look, coming together now. See,
Yeah.
um, but so we would have panels about producing, and which is very interesting because most film festivals don't think about that. They don't teach that, But anyway, there was and I would bring all the American producers, and then, the Brazilian, we had simultaneous translation. And one of my favorite moments, I had brought two friends of mine, producers, they're still film producers, and they were on a panel. And there's a dynamic, I'm sure you can identify with this. There's a dynamic, I get this from my Trinidadian, I'm half Trinidadian, I get this from my Trinidadian filmmaker friends all the time, where they have this sense of, American filmmakers have access to all the money, right? We have access to nothing, they have access to all the money. Anyway, so we were on this panel, and so the simultaneous translation, and my two friends, Kevin Chinoy and Gil Holland, were up on the panel. And, Brazilian filmmakers were asking questions, and there was a conversation going back and forth. And Kevin and Gil were like, and so what was the budget for your film? Oh, it was $500,000. Oh, that's fantastic. How did you get that? Well, we got it from the Brazilian government. And Kevin and Gil were like, what?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and whole conversation turned around as the Brazilians realized they had access to more money than the Americans
That's
had.
funny. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're now the only country in the world that doesn't have federal government money. They're state level, but
Yeah.
federal government
Yeah.
money for film production.
Yeah. Yep. Very funny.
Anyway, they apparently were going to be starting in April, but they're hiring me this year again as a consultant.
Great. Maybe I'll
Uh,
come and check it out. When is it?
It's in September
Okay.
in Miami, but
Mhm.
apparently the mayor of Rio de Janeiro is incredibly excited about the idea of using film as economic development, which, back to your your university days, but and that hasn't been the case because 29 years ago, the reason that we flew 150 filmmakers up from Brazil was because of support from the government and from Petrobras. But
Mhm.
then, and there are a lot of films set in Brazil in the 2000s, I think, which really look at the unbelievable level of corruption that ended up happening between the government and Petrobras, which
Mhm. Right.
oil
Right.
company.
Right.
So the Brazilian Film Festival lost all that money because Petrobras was a massive supporter of the arts. So a lot of people had to go to prison, and a lot of people had to, get kicked out, and the money dried up. So this is the first time in a long time. Oh my gosh, how do I stop that? Oh, um, sorry, are you hearing that?
I didn't hear anything.
Oh,
No.
I'm getting an alert. So
No.
oh my God. So we have a whole Brazil thing. All right. So you came from Brazil, you were 9, and you were a Superman fan, and trying to figure it out. I don't think at 9 I had figured out that things were not real, that they
Yeah,
didn't.
no, I was 10 and a half, 11, but I knew that Superman wasn't flying. I knew that much.
Uh-huh,
But I
uh-huh.
wanted to know how, why. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then I also have a very similar experience to you. I came to America to do a master's degree in English literature at the University of Miami. And I really don't know how it happened, but anyway, I took an elective in the film department in script writing, and my friends in the English department laughed at me, and they said, well, why are you doing film? That's not going to get you anywhere, is it? And
That's
here I
funny.
am.
Yeah. 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 Well,
Yeah.
it's like a bug, if you feel it, and I felt it from that first class, I knew that I wanted to get involved in filmmaking.
Mm. So you took that one class that was still just really theory. When did you actually make your first film?
Well, I ended up working, I worked on a lot of projects for other people. So,
Uh,
the very first film that I was a PA, I think, on like three projects, and I was not a very good PA. I
oh,
was not
really?
very, yeah, yeah. I think I failed as a PA. I think one time I was even like on a Miami Vice episode. I was supposed to do some crowd control by World Trade Center. They filmed in New York. There was a big episode in New York. I don't remember what I was supposed to do, but it didn't go. I was just not cut out to be a PA. Some people are better at that. It wasn't me, but I turned out I was pretty good at other things, but not as a PA. But
Not as a
I
PA.
and so the very first film I worked on two films at the very beginning where I learned a lot what to do and what not to do. The first film was a film about it was a documentary about Haiti, and I basically worked for a year for free helping to craft the organization. And I met filmmakers through that. And it was during the baby doc era. And there was
Mm,
a film kind of like talking, there were a lot of Haitian refugees at the time and figuring out, trying to tell their story. And
mm.
there were a lot of
The
anecdotes.
director of that. Who is the
It was a
director?
woman named Vanyashka. Her name was Margie Gold, but she had a film sort of nickname, and it's Vanyashka something. Or I don't remember what her name is. Like a Russian derivative. And
In Miami at that time? These sound like
what?
very Miami projects.
No, that she was based in New York.
Oh,
It was, it was in New York, and we went to Haiti and filmed in Haiti, and that was an experience in itself because I snuck into the country. I smuggled in film. I felt like I was because it was, if we were caught, it was going to be problems, and there were a lot of things that were not right about the project as well. We recreated certain scenes, and I always felt like, and I saw the film many years later. I mean, after the shoot, there was a falling out. I started to edit a little bit, and then I left. And it took her like 10 years to do the film. And I saw it at one time, and they used these scenes where it was, it wasn't really what was happening. It was a sort of recreation. It wasn't stated as such. And it kind of, I learned that you really have to look at all films with trying to figure out what's there on purpose, what's there created, um,
interesting.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it turned out the documentary you didn't think was honest. It wasn't honest.
Yeah, in a way, there was a lot of dishonest happenings around the documentary. Yeah, in my opinion, and but it was a great experience, and I met a lot of people. That actually, besides this other independent film that I PA'd on, it landed me. I met people who were doing documentary films at the time, political documentaries, which is what I really wanted to do. Because I was combining my international development studies with film, with my two
Yes.
passions. But I tried and tried and tried, and I wasn't successful at getting jobs. But one company told me about an equipment manufacturing company that was looking for someone, for salesperson. And I figured, let me go there. I'll meet a lot of filmmakers. I'll learn about the equipment. And that's what I did for a few years. And through that, I did meet a lot of people who eventually hired me on jobs. And then I began working as a
Kind of jobs. If you were not a good PA, what kind of
right.
jobs?
So I started. I'll have a story about that. So one of the people who was my customer was a lot of camera people. So he gave me my big break. He hired me as an assistant cameraman in film, as well as a video engineer when they started doing video. It was like a film video transition. And so I started working as a freelance assistant camera person and video tech person. And I'll tell you one story about him that I learned. I learned a lot from him, but he said he got this great job offer. He started shooting, but he had been an assistant. So when he started shooting, that's when he hired me to be his assistant. And he got this offer to do this like 10 days shoot in Puerto Rico as an assistant, but he had now graduated to being a camera person very recently, though.
Right,
And
right.
so he asked me if I wanted to do to be the assistant. He wasn't shooting it, somebody else was shooting it, but he turned it down because in his mind, he
Yes.
was now a camera person and he was not going back. And I was like, I can't believe it. It's a 10
So,
days, a lot of money at the beach, at a hotel. It's going to be a great job. And he turned it down. And so I learned that, you know, when you have a passion for something, when you have like what you want to do, you have to follow it, you have to do it. He forfeited the money, forfeited the time, but he was now a camera person. That
Yeah.
was that. Anyway, so I worked as an assistant camera person and video tech, and then I had also sold editing equipment when I was at this company, and I got hired by a they used to make computer training tapes, and I became an editor for computer training programs. It's as boring as you can get, but
Wow. Really?
it gave you like great skills. Like you had to really figure out how to tell the story of very boring videos like VisiCalc and programs like the ancient word processing programs and Excel and all that. But this company, slowly from being a computer training video production company, we started, through me, I was basically their editor, we started getting other clients, outside clients. And that turned into music videos and television shows and things like that. So I became an editor, and
Wow.
that lasted for many years. I did a lot of editing, loved it, you know, worked with all kinds of people in a small room, doing offline and online editing, smoke and all kinds of things happening in the edit room. This is now in the 80s. This is the
Yes.
80s and 80s and 90s. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Before everybody stopped smoking
Yeah,
inside.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so lots of stories about that, but including working with some great filmmakers, some people who ended up, directing features in Hollywood and big music videos and things like that. So I was very fortunate to have and learned, always learning along the way. I think the one thing about being a filmmaker is that if you're fortunate to work with other people, you're learning, you're always learning. And that's one thing I really love about this.
Well, on a very basic level, filmmaking is often, at the cutting edge of technology, like you were saying about the shift from film to video,
Hmm. Hmm.
and and then, there was a certain period there where it was like, is it going to be this kind of video or that kind of video and then we have to use all these different types of
Yeah,
video and then, but there's always this cutting edge nature of film that means that even if you sit still, it's going to keep changing.
for sure. Yeah.
New
Oh,
technology next week.
I remember when we were editing, non-linear or linear, I should say, linear video, and some people were like, "I'm editing film. I'm never going to go to video."
Yes.
Then the video people who started editing with linear were, "I'm not going to go to computerized editing. This is how I do it." And so now I'm the kind of the old timer, and I like what I like, Premiere or Final Cut or whatever it is, and but you do have to. The technology
Oh, why is
changes
that
all the
the
time.
old timer? Most of
No,
my
I know. Yeah, no, I'm saying, but I'm adapting. Yes, yes,
aha,
yes.
you're
Yeah,
adapting to
yeah,
Premiere.
yeah.
I
But now there are going to be new programs, and I'm not sure how far along I'm going to go.
right.
I guess if you're doing your own stuff, you're not forced to change as much.
Yeah,
But if you're
decide what
working for
works
others,
for you.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
What works best for you. That's
yeah.
so great. So, my favorite film critic is an English critic called Mark Commode.
Hmm.
And he says that there are three times that you make a film. One is um, when you write the script and you see the film, you have a vision of what the film is. And then the next time is when you are on set and you direct the film. And then the third time is in the edit. And I think that there are it's a minority of filmmakers who really come up from the editing. I think, but that's a play. Emily's an editor.
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah, I've always heard it's great. It's a great natural progression from editing to directing because
Directing.
all the mistakes that were made when it was shot, and what you need, what shots you need to make the film. I mean, there's a lot to be said about being a DP and becoming an editor. But I have one quick story about a DP. On that second film that I worked on, again for free as a PA. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I slept in the Chelsea hotel because they needed somebody to watch over the equipment one night. And I wrote down the diagrams of all the lights, where they were placed. I was in heaven. It was just some scene in a bedroom in the Chelsea hotel. I was in heaven. but I remember meeting the DP. No, he was the assistant cameraman on that job. And I said to him, so what do you want to do? And he said, I want to be a director of photography. I was like, wow, I never knew anybody wanted to be a director of photography. I thought everybody wanted to be a producer or director, but he knew, and he was
Yeah.
great. He turned out to do, many years later, when I was editing videos for Cyndi Lauper, he was the DP by coincidence. So it was kind of like we met many years later, and he became a DP in California and all that. But I think it's a natural progression to go from a DP to a director if that's what you want, or from an editor, or from where, from a writer. There's all different, venues. But for
Yeah.
me, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to transition to my first real directing job. I decided after editing for many years that I was going to quit and I was going to go freelance director. And it's kind of like what Herb did when he decided he
Yeah.
wasn't going to be a assistant
Not an
anymore.
assistant cameraman.
Right. And my first job was a great job. The first job I got was $1 million production of a ride film in New York. This was a live action ride film that played in the Empire State Building. And I was hired, A, because I knew the producers from my editing days, and B, because it was a very intensive post-production work. There weren't a lot of cuts, but it all had to be thought out so that the shots would flow from one to another. These are kind of like the films that you see at Universal Studios and Disney World, where the seats move and things are happening around you. It's called a
I'm
ride.
following. When you say a ride film, I'm
It's like
not.
a motion simulator ride film. You go into a theater, the seats move, and it
I
feels like you're flying and falling, and things are happening around you. And they have them at the parks.
right.
But this was an idea to have it at the Empire State Building, and so we built the theater. I wasn't in charge of that, but the film played in the Empire State Building for many years, and it was a great job because we were doing helicopters, we were doing all kinds of shooting, and it was it was like $1 million production. We had Wall Street for the day. We blocked it off. This is before 9/11. We were trying to get permission to fly through the World Trade Center, which we didn't get, but we flew under the Brooklyn Bridge and over the Manhattan Bridge. We had spent the night at FAO Schwartz all night with all the toys. It was like kind of like this crazy trip going around through New York where things happen to you. And so
Fabulous.
the audience is just, in their seats, like rocking and rolling. So that was the first gig. That was my first job as a director. And it was like, wow, this is good. But but then reality sunk in. That project lasted for a while, but then reality sunk in. It's like, okay, now what? And
Now
so
who's going to hire me?
what's that?
Now who's going to
Yeah,
hire me?
exactly. And so, so there were a number of years of doing, things that I had also edited a lot of, which were like corporate promotional PSAs, commercials, that sort of thing. And that was fine. And then I got what happened, I think maybe the best job as far as being hired, which was a similar film like the one in New York, but in Australia. So
Ooh.
we did a lot of great underwater, the Barrier Reef, and going to the Uluru, which is the Ayers Rock in the and just like Sydney, we were based in Sydney. What a great city! And we did a lot of helicopter, a lot of scenes with horses at sunrise in the Old West, just beautiful stuff. And that was a year-long project. So I was kind of commuting from New York to Sydney, like every 6 weeks. It was great. My family was back in New York, then they came and joined us. We were in the Barrier Reef at the same time that they were shooting the Thin Red Line, so all the stars were there, and we had a great time. It was a really good experience. And that was around 2000, and so things were going well. And then 9/11 happened, and I happened to be in New York at 9/11. I went down. I was in an edit room, and the owner, who was a friend of mine, his daughter went to Stuyvesant High School, which was right next door to the World Trade Center. So he and I walked down there that day and experienced that calamity. Anyway, after that, like, things stopped. The corporate world.
Okay.
Hmm?
Was his
Yes,
daughter?
yes, she was okay. Yes, she was okay. Yeah, thank God she was okay. And yeah, they had evacuated the school. We didn't find her then, but they had moved everybody and It was a trip. It was a trip walking around to go. I lived in Brooklyn, so I had to walk. It was just it was a trip.
Right, there was no transportation or anything.
Correct. I walked over the bridge. Yeah, yeah. But but so that affected the New York production. I mean, I don't know about maybe the whole country. I'm not sure, but it was really like hard.
There were New York was what was the campaign that they did? But they New York did an advertising campaign to get people to come to New York because
Mm,
people didn't want to come because of
mm,
the 9/11.
hmm
And I at the time was the executive director of IFP Miami, and we were about to have our meeting, our annual meeting in New York. And the five executive directors of what is now the Gothams and Film Independent and IFP Minnesota and IFP Chicago, we got together on a meeting. And at the beginning of the meeting, it was a few days after 9/11. And the meeting sort of was, well, we're canceling our event. And one of the ladies in the group said, I mean, look, I have two young children. I'm not going to be getting on a plane, you know. And I don't know where this came out of me, but the words came out of my mouth. I was like, I'll be damned if some terrorist is going to tell me
mm,
where I go. And we ended up having our event. And it was in the piers. And the piers were supposed to become the morgue.
mm,
And there were no bodies. So it never became the morgue that it was supposed to be. We had the rental contract, we had paid and so we ended up having the Gothams that year, and I got to be in the same room as Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro.
ah,
As
uh-huh,
Martin Scorsese and Robert De
mhm,
Niro ended up being such huge advocates for New York,
mhm, for sure.
and for that whole campaign to try to get people to come to New York. And so, it was so soon after, and we were definitely some of the first people who went to New York, had a big event, had it at the piers.
When was it? When was it?
But
What
like,
month? Oh, like a
oh,
week, huh?
uh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was probably more than a week later, though, right? No, I mean, because
Oh, the
yeah,
event was,
yeah.
but really soon after.
Hmm,
And
hmm,
I know
yeah.
that we had our meeting. The meeting was supposed to be to cancel everything. That was only 4 or 5 days later, because we were, when I went to New York for the event, I ended up staying at the ashram, my spiritual home, and there were two people who lived there. One of them was a journalist. She has since died, and one of them was the spiritual leader of the ashram, and they both had special badges to be able to go into the area. One as a spiritual leader, and the other one as a journalist. And so every day, I'd be there, I'd be going to deal with my event, and they were getting in a car full of toys and full of things to take them down.
Mm,
Um, but it was
mm,
very, very memorable thing. But yeah, Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro turned into, and then out of that was born the Tribeca Film Festival,
hmm, hmm.
you
Yeah,
know,
amazing, amazing. Yeah,
as a
yeah.
result of their work, getting people to come to New York and to feel safe. So I felt as though we did our bit.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that no doubt killed production.
Yeah. So after that, it was a struggle, after 9/11. And so let's see. So yeah, but I continued to work in doing the sort of like more ordinary kinds of jobs, which were promotionals. At some point, a friend of mine from college and I formed a production company together, and probably like in 2007, something like that. And we continued. He had clients and I had clients, and we joined forces. And we called ourselves Salt and Pepper Media because of our salt and pepper hair, and we did a lot of cool stuff. But again, more in the promotional marketing, that sort of thing. Then he started, so that led to the formation of my company now, because he met, his son was on a baseball team, and he met some of the parents on that baseball team. And one of the guys there found out that my business partner was a filmmaker, and he said he wanted to make a film about his dad. And his dad had an incredible story. He's a Holocaust survivor. He went by land from Poland to China, was a Shanghai Jew that, and then he went from Shanghai to California, then made his way to New York, with nothing, and ended up, he was like a pharmacist, made a lot of money, and had an amazing story, amazing, resilient story. And this guy wanted to make a film about his father. And my partner said, yeah, we could do that. That's, we make films.
Yes.
And, we weren't that excited about it, but it was like, hey, it's a job, and it's sort of could be interesting. Anyway, it was a turnaround for both of us, but especially for me as well, because we made this film and we interviewed the guy. And then we added stock footage, home movies, music, graphics, blah, 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 blah. We had a documentary of this guy, but not for Hollywood prices, reasonable that the family was paying, but they loved it. They
Right.
loved it. And for us, it was something like, wow, we make these promotional videos, they show them at a conference, they show them at a meeting, finished. This was
Yes.
going to have a shelf life. This was going to be there for generations.
Yes.
So I kind of became like, I want to do more of this. And so we were doing a couple, it was not easy at first, but we started doing them. But also at the same time, my business partner was getting involved with reality TV. And so
Oh,
he went in the reality TV way.
okay.
And I moved from New York to Florida. And when I got to Florida, I decided, this might be a really good place to continue that business of recording these legacy videos, these tribute videos, these stories of ordinary people that have extraordinary lives. And so that's how I parlayed sort of like our video film experience into a company that makes videos for, as a business.
And the company is called Legacy Video,
No,
is
it's,
it?
it's called Heritage Media Group.
Heritage.
Yeah, the
Okay.
website is We Connect Generations, because that's what we do, is we connect generations. And then
Uh,
last year I finally wrote a book about the experience of recording other people's lives. That's on Amazon. It's called Transmitting Wisdom, recording the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. And it's got a lot of quotes from, why people do this. And it's a how-to. How do you record someone's life story? So
uh-huh.
that's what that is. Yeah.
Funny,
So
when you're talking about extraordinary stories, the first thought that I had was, in a way, everybody's life is extraordinary.
100%.
Is that what you've
That
discovered?
that yes, and I believe that we have the capabilities of recording everyone's life. I think every family, whether you want to do it on your own iPhone and just do it yourself, or you want to spend a lot of money and hire the best filmmakers in the world, everyone has the right and the ability to record their elder stories, because we have the technology, and every life is extraordinary on some level, and it's very meaningful to that family especially. So imagine if you had a recording of your great 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 grandparents from
Right.
like 1700, wherever they were. Would be amazing. It would be, so that's I think what we're trying to do.
Have you had that experience? Because you were saying with the one you told us about, the one who ended up in Shanghai. I've been to Shanghai, by the way. What an
Okay,
amazing
I have,
thing.
yeah. Mhm.
But I just wonder if you could make one of these videos and go back to the 1700s. If you were saying you were using stock footage, and would that be something you could actually do?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean. You could use stock footage to represent
Right.
times past, and you can do recreation, I guess, also, but
Right.
usually the way usually is doing, for example, the life story of someone who's anywhere between 70 and 100, and
Right.
you interview them,
Yep.
And through their story, you learn about their grandparents. So what they remember. So now you're going back maybe another 100 years, and
Yes.
and whatever ancillary materials fit along the way. But you're really getting the family story and the dynamics together. And sometimes it's the husband and the wife. Sometimes it's one person. Sometimes it's brothers. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I think there's a real value for families to preserve their history. It's their history, their stories. Yeah.
Tell us about your favorite one that you ever did.
Well, I have to tell you, I think I learned from all of them.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in the book, I thank my clients because I've learned more about living from their lives. I mean, I'm always amazed. I do a lot of editing for these things, or I supervise the editing, or I do it myself. But there's a lot of editing that goes into these things. But in the end, they say some amazing, full of wisdom, full of
Right.
wisdom. They have things to share about how one should live their lives. And these are people from all different backgrounds and all different cultures and religions. But everyone has a sense of humanity. And what does it take? What do they want to pass down to their children and grandchildren and great grandchildren? And so I've learned a lot. I've learned about the Mrs. Hertz, who I filmed her for 2 days. She was over, I think 92 at the time. She didn't want to do it. My wife, my life, I don't need to do this. Her sons wanted her to do it, and she finally agreed. And she spent 2 days, it was a 1 day shoot. She spent 2 days, and she remembered everything from 3 to 90. I mean, it was unbelievable. And her story was like this, like from the highs to the lows. A refugee, her mother lost in war, yeah, I mean, died in war, and then, become successful real estate. And it's full of the drama of
Right.
any Hollywood film, and she had a lot of good things to say. But one of the things she said was, you can't you can't think that it's so bad, and you can't think that it's so good. You have to kind of like go down the road. And she experienced the highs and the lows, but her father had told her it's never as bad as you think it is, and it's never as great as you think it is. So
That's
that's me.
interesting. Yeah. How fascinating, hearing all those stories. I just think that's fantastic. I love that. I love your job.
Yeah, yeah. And that actually led to the two independent films that I made in the last 4 years.
Yes. Tell us
Because
about those. Yeah, yeah.
Sure, sure. So I had presented in New York at the Center for Jewish History. I've been presenting these kinds of stories of our lives videos for different audiences, and I presented in New York, and there was a couple there who I knew. They were actually my friends, but they weren't aware of the work that I had done. And
Right.
when they saw the film, they decided they'd been looking for someone to make a film about their son who had taken his life at 16. And he wanted to make a film that talked about the issue of teenage suicide, vis-a-vis his story. So an homage to him, Ezra, as well as bringing the issue to the forefront. And that was a film that we made 2020, I guess. We finished it, and it was a lot of work. It was a lot. It was from the heart, because I knew Ezra. I knew, he was a friend of my son's. Not They were a little different in age, but they hung out together occasionally, and it turned out, I think of course they were very pleased with the film. The parents were, but we entered it into film festivals. It won a number of awards, including like at the best film at the Psychology Award Film Festival, and a
Ah,
bunch of these different festivals
wow.
where the topic was of importance. And
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, so I
Let's go
did that.
ahead and watch the trailer for the film. I hand it over to you, Emily, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
None of his work felt like student work. It didn't feel like you're looking at a kid's work. It felt like you're seeing art.
Play the violin as like a 12, 13-year-old. It might not seem as a really cool instrument.
erases the line at the bottom and lowers it. That was so much Ezra, about how boundaries were only meant to be moved.
All the mountains look so different than they did on satellite, and I'm like, wait, what do you mean?
He was not a typical teenager.
He always liked to kick.
His hugs.
There was something very lovable and endearing about him. And also when he would get angry, it would be a big anger in that way too.
How do you distinguish basic teenage angst, stuff that teenagers are going through, from that?
I just had this dream that was really a nightmare.
I had the phone in my ear and I threw it on the ground.
I spent 2 hours in a car with my cousin Yossi asking what had happened, and he lied the entire time.
I felt in some crazy ways like I had killed him.
Suicide is such a taboo thing.
Everyone deals with the guilt that they face. What could they have done differently?
If people want to think, oh, why didn't Shani and Moshe see that this kid is doing self-portraits like this? Oh, I would have known he was suicidal. Well, it's just not that simple.
Had college plans, travel plans, girlfriend plans. That's one of the most confusing parts about everything.
There were so many people that helped us through this. Without them, I wouldn't be here.
Ultra disturbing piece of this story is that it just keeps happening.
Beautiful. You know, Walter, I hadn't realized. I don't think I ever saw the trailer. I watched the whole.
Oh,
I actually hadn't seen the trailer. It's very moving.
yeah. I was just moved. I haven't seen it in a while. I was. Sometimes I get moved by my own work. It's kind of funny.
No. I have a client, Thomas Allen Harris, and he made this series where people talk about their family photos. It's very simple. So every time I see the trailer, I tear up. So, yeah,
and that's what it was like editing this thing, because I edited it, and I would cry a lot. Because you know, and I did the trailer. It's a pretty good trailer. I'm happy with that. Yeah, it conveys the story, I think. But so that was the first of the in the recent years. I think I always found a way to make short films. When I was working at the equipment rental house, I would borrow the equipment because if I told them if I needed to sell it, I need to know what it does and how it works. So they always let me borrow the equipment. When I was working at the editing place, they let me use the editing equipment also to learn it and to do things. So I always managed to do these little kind of short projects, and with one with a Brazilian filmmaker who then made some features. But this was the first one that I made that was my film. I wasn't hired by, I had total creative everything, you know? Yeah.
Yes.
And it was challenging. It was challenging, yeah.
What do you, when did you actually make this film?
So I guess trying to think, we shot in 2019. Okay. And then I think I was editing during COVID, which was 2020. So it's probably, something like that. Yeah.
And the incidence of teen suicide, as far as I know, has only gone up.
Yes, for a lot of different reasons. And you know, one of the things about the film is that I wanted to include Ezra's voice because he's not around. So we used, you could see some his diaries. He was an artist. He had a lot of paintings and drawings, all kinds of materials. But what we found, which was amazing, was his music, because he also played the violin. And his father found like an old iPod, and he had recorded stuff on it by jiggering something or other. And so we found, and so the whole soundtrack, pretty much 90% of the soundtrack is also Ezra's music. And it fit with all the moods and emotions, including the scenes where it's like gripplingly terror, and his music of the violin screeching and stuff like that. It all seemed to work.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that detail. That's really amazing. Since you made this film, And you said it was been in all these festivals, it's won all these awards. I think it's interesting it won the Psychology Film Festival Award. What have you been able to do with the film? From the trailer, it's clear that your goal is to have this be a film that helps people. What have you been able to do in terms of impact with the film?
So Shani, Ezra's mom, and I have collaborated. And the website has a lot of educational elements. And for example, she came to Tampa and spoke for 3 days at the local school and invited people from the community and from other places to come, teachers, staff, parents, and then also those who are victims of suicide, meaning that they lost someone to suicide. So we had 3 different days of workshops. She also, we've had these, there's one, we did one at a university in Canada, forget the name of the school, but in Montreal. And so the idea is to get these workshops going and showing the film, sometimes with Shani there, talking about her experience, and sometimes just the film and having professors talk about it. And so after speaking with you, you had given me the whole idea of the impact fundraising. And so we're working on that. I actually was doing research for the foundation for my current film, and I found one that funds mental health projects. So I sent it off to Shani and her people to say, hey, contact them because maybe they'll underwrite the program, which
Yeah.
was what you were talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, the thing that I love to be able to reveal to filmmakers is that there may very well be more money in the impact part of the film than there was in the making of the film. Because funders are, well, they don't have to worry about whether the film is going to get finished or not, right? The film's already finished. And now we have this film that can really be an opportunity to create conversation about this very difficult topic. By the way, years ago, I worked for youth radio, and youth radio trains young people to be broadcast journalists. And we were approached by the California Endowment, which is a mental health foundation. Well, wellness. I don't think it's just mental health. I think they do physical wellness as well. Anyway, massive foundation. And they approached youth radio and they said, you know, the hardest population to reach is teenagers. You know, children, their parents. But teenagers, the last thing they're thinking about is their mental health. And so they said, so here you at Youth Radio, you're attracting youth because they want to become broadcast journalists, they want to learn how to make music and all this stuff. And so we would like to partner with you. And so the California was it the endowment, California Endowment, and Youth Radio came up with this strategy. And so when I got there, I was the director of development and I was sitting in my office, and next door to my office was the office for the therapist. And so we had one therapist for 3 days a week and one therapist 2 days a week. And the kids who were there learning journalism would often write things in their exercises that would reveal things about what was happening at home. You know, my mother died of AIDS, or, you know, I'm being sexually abused, or whatever the things would come out in the classroom. And so what the strategy was that they would be invited to go to see the therapist, but they never used the word therapist. It was always, you know, why don't you go and talk to Lisa about this? So they destigmatized the whole idea of therapy. And it was just, you know, oh, Lisa's in, oh, it's Tuesday, Lisa's in, why don't you go talk to her about this?
Beautiful, beautiful.
Beautiful work.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were approached by the funder because they were like, we have such difficulty communicating with teenagers.
Yeah, yeah. And Ezra, the person who says I felt I killed him, that was his therapist. So
Oh,
yeah. I mean, Ezra had a therapist, and he talks about and he all talks about how it's taboo within the the therapist's culture to even like if they say that one of their patients took their
committed.
life, that's like a failure, or seemingly a failure. So there's a taboo even within therapists that he
Wow.
talks about. Yeah, yeah,
That's an amazing fact that I
yeah,
just learned.
yeah.
Wow. And so then how did you come to make your second film, feature film?
So the second film was I also knew the people involved, but it was they I when I spoke to my brother and he said this is the height of COVID and he said, listen, don't tell anybody, but we're playing basketball. We have these 10 guys and we're playing basketball. This is when everybody had to stay. No, people weren't congregating, and especially in New York, it was like forbidden to hang out with anybody. They took all the courts, all the baskets away from all the
Oh, that's
parks.
right. Yeah.
The gyms were closed. So these group of men are passionate about basketball, and they snuck and they found a court and they were playing basketball when nobody was even meeting with each other. Everybody was, as one of the guys says, everybody's home watching Netflix, and here we are playing prohibition basketball, they called it. And this is the story that I think hooked me to why I want to make the film. My brother said, yeah, what we do? We play basketball, we're going up against each other, close, close, close. And then when we take a break, we sit 6 feet apart from each other. And I thought, we got to do something with that because it's just too much, you know? So I went up and filmed their story. And the way I see the film now, I also, in terms of impact, I really, I'm speaking to distributor now about it because I really think it's a story of COVID and how everybody reacted. Everybody needed to find something to do. And
Yeah.
these guys, this is what they needed to do for their mental health. They needed to do this. And so that it's a story of life during COVID through this basketball. And it's funny because I use Governor Cuomo, who later became, he had to resign, but he won an Emmy for his daily presentations. I didn't notice, I wasn't in New York, but every day he would go on and the country watched him talk about what they were doing and how many people were dying and the curves and this and that. And so I used him as a thread throughout the film along with other devices. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm glad that you're going for distribution. Do you know where it might end up being? We can see.
I don't. Well, right now, no, I know the website. It's right now on the website. But I want to see if I can do it in an educational setting. But the website is thehiddencourt.com, and the film is there for free right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called The
Okay.
Hidden Court. Yeah.
So let's talk about the film that you and I met.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
talk about that. This is a much bigger project, and
Yes.
yeah. So I didn't actually meet him, but your business partner contacted me. I was at the International Christian Film Festival, and I started getting texts from somebody who said, I'm here. Can you meet with me? And I was with my client. And anyway, that was how I came to meet.
So Robert is, he's written many, many books, and he wrote a book about the Star of David. And a year ago in the Tampa Bay Film Festival, he approached some producers about maybe making a film, and they seemed to be interested. And he pursued some with them, and then they wanted money to write a treatment. They wanted money up front, kind of thing, and he wasn't prepared to do that. So he was talking to me about it, and again, almost like with Ezra's parents, he said, "Oh, well, why don't we do something together?" So we decided to embark on a journey together. It's not based on his book; it's inspired by his book, and it's a story of the Star of David. Which has a fascinating story. It's a mystical origins. It's got contemporary significance, and it traces the Star of David, which people today look at as a Jewish symbol, but it was used by many different cultures and religions throughout human history. It's a hexagram. And
Right.
so what the film is looking at, it's going to be a challenge. I'm really looking forward to it because I want to have a lot of emotional content and context with this symbol. And what does a symbol mean? And you know, and how do people use symbols? So I'm looking at it as a it's not only an intellectual experience, but also it's full of emotion. And I'm trying to get celebrities and rabbis and like an eclectic mix of people to tell the story of the Star of David.
You know, I never told you this, Walter, but and it's not going to show because the ring is dirty, but I have this ring, and when it's clean, it has a Star of David in the bottom. You know, cut
Okay.
into the glass. And I got it from Marjaya Sati Bhagavati, who was when she was in her body. And one day I walked in and I said, and she said, "Are you Jewish?" And I said, "No, but I could be." And she gave me
Oh,
gave-
that's funny.
yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah. But I mean, it was used in Buddhism and Hinduism and Islam and all, you know, all kinds of things. So I think it'll be an interesting project. As you know, unfortunately, since we started the project, Robert passed away. So I want to do this. I want to keep this going, you know, in his honor and do the film. And as you said, it's a bigger endeavor than my previous films, but I'm feeling confident that, you know, we've got to go forward. Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's a celebration of, but also, you know, I learned so much from my clients, you know, and I didn't know that the star, we call it the Star of David, which then puts it into Judaism, right? If we called it a hexagram, it wouldn't be Jewish,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
But
Correct.
so what I learned from you is that it has this ancient history, which makes total sense. It's a mathematical
Exactly.
symbol,
And
you
as a
know?
matter of fact, there's a mathematical theorem that's called the Star of David, which is going to be in the film. I'm going to have the guy who invented it. He's 95 years old. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to record him. If not him, one of his students.
You gotta catch
But he figured out that when you plot the star in points, there's a whole mathematical thing involved. And there's science and there's architecture. And there's Kabbalah, and it's you know, it's filled with a lot of mystical and other worldly things.
Yes. And when Robert came to the International Christian Film Festival, in what way is the Star of David a Christian symbol?
Well, it's found in churches. It's found in a lot of different churches. And I had told him to go to that festival. I was out of town. I said, Robert, go check it out. And because I thought that there might be a market there, both for that kind of film, you know. But it's certainly you can find it in many churches. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw something also with the Pope. I have to look it up, but there might be something in the Vatican with the Star of David also, but it's certainly part of the churches and all that. Yeah, and in Islam too, they call it the Seal of Solomon. That's the name they give to that, but it's the same. Sometimes it's 5 stars, sometimes it's 6 stars. So it's changed over the centuries, but they call it the Seal of Solomon.
But mathematically, those are very different.
That is true. And there's a lot of different meanings between 5 points and 6 points. Yes.
Right.
That is true. Yeah.
And then I never thought about this before talking to you about this, but oh no, in the history of witchcraft, it's the pentagram.
No, but right. So the pentagram, but that's 5, right? But there is something of the occult in Star of David as well.
Yes.
So we touch upon that as well. Yeah.
Fascinating. I just think it's fabulous. I just think it. So your next step is you're going to be making a fundraising piece, right?
Right. So thanks to you, we raised over $20,000, and so that's going to enable me to do a little bit of shooting and put something together to to continue fundraising. In the meantime, I'm looking up a lot of different organizations, some grants and foundations and things like that who might be interested in the subject.
Fantastic.
And I'm already lining up people to be interviewed from scholars. I've spoken to a lot of scholars this week and rabbis, and we have a couple comedians on board as well. So I want to mix it up.
Yeah. No, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. I can't wait to see the piece. So Walter, thank you so much for
Thank you. That's been really fun.
Fabulous experience, and I learned all these new things about you. It always happens.
Yep.
The
Very good. I
Brazil
liked it.
connection, like wow.
Yeah. We'll have to have a caipirinha in Miami.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll definitely be at the Brazilian Film Festival this year. The Brazilian Film Festival was great.
Oh, I'm gonna go.
Excellent. I'll see you in Miami then.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Emily.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
Anil. Nice to meet you. Bye.